Believe me, I know in my heart that I wouldn't be here today.
You killed the old Richard Pryor?
Yeah, that person's dead.
Why were Richard Pryor's final years terrible? On December 10th, 2005, 10 days after turning 65, Richard Pryor passed away. He was able to reach a wide audience with his sharp remarks and narrative approach, and his passing shocked his followers. Pryor was bedridden by 2002. His close friend and comedy writer Paul Mooney wrote that he talks a little, he still got his faculties, still got his sense of humor. Was Pryor considered an icon even in his last days? Pryor's standing as a cultural analyst was cemented by the time of his death in December 2005, 10 days after turning 65. He had won the coveted Mark Twain Award in 1999, and the Edinburgh Fringe Festival had established the Richard Pryor Award for Outstanding Ethnic Minority Comedy. Professional respect and public affection had also increased the DVD re-release of Live in Concert, especially in the UK. Pryor's condition deteriorated during the 1990s. He filed for divorce from Flynn, his first wife, for a second time. Deborah, one of his previous wives, came back and took on the role of a 24-hour nurse. He was able to land a few TV roles and had an appropriately bizarre wheelchair-bound cameo in David Lynch's Lost Highway in 1996. The less troubled and possibly less talented black performers must continue to strive for what many believed Richard Pryor could have accomplished. As an actor, Richard Pryor essentially failed to advance the cause of African Americans. This is undoubtedly the case, but it's important to keep in mind that Pryor's on-screen persona, which typically involved playing the innocent fool, was far more appealing to white audiences than his stage performance. Pryor once declared, "I'm uneducated and I live in a racist country, but I can make a living doing what I love and a lot of people love me. That is the best you can do." Was he an outsider who occasionally engaged in battle to sustain his life? He struggled with drug and alcohol addiction for many years. One particularly painful incident occurred when he was freebasing at home and severely burned over half of his body. Pryor, a self-described junkie at the time, needed 6 weeks to heal from his burns and considerably longer to kick his habits. He fought against multiple sclerosis all through the 1990s. Pryor's ailing health was visible in Another You, a 1991 blockbuster that was one of his final films. The following year, Pryor attempted a comeback, performing stand-up comedy on television shows and clubs despite appearing emaciated and fragile and having obvious speech and mobility issues. He portrayed a frustrated patient with multiple sclerosis in a 1995 episode of the TV show Chicago Hope. On June 9, 1980, Richard Pryor, high on crack cocaine early in the evening, doused himself with rum and lit it on fire. He leaped out of his Northridge, California home's window before his visitors could come to his aid. Many believed that day should have been his last. But what kept him alive for an additional 25 years following that fateful evening in 1980 is a mystery. He was a ball of fire as he rushed down Parthenia Street. He wandered around the area of San Fernando Valley for several minutes, ignoring calls from onlookers, his garments melting into his skin and the flesh on his upper body bubbling and blistering like meat in a wok. He was eventually stopped by 2 police officers long enough for an ambush to show up. After that, Pryor was brought to Sherman Oaks Hospital, where it was widely believed, at least by his relatives and business partners, that he would spend his final hours on Earth. There were prepared obituaries. Some family members and unsympathetic friends began glancing over his belongings. It's true that during those initial crucial hours, several items were stolen from his home. Those closest to Richard Pryor had anticipated this, though they were nonetheless startled. His destructive behavior had started to escalate. His drug and alcohol abuse had no boundaries. He was plagued by feelings of insecurity, emotional sorrow, and rage from his early years that would never go away, no matter how wealthy and well-known he became. He was idolized on TV and on stage, but in real life, he never stopped snapping at people. He purposely ruined professional engagements and beat up spouses and girlfriends. While Paul Schrader was filming Blue Collar in 1977, he got into fistfights with the cast and showed the director his loaded revolver. After something significant occurred in his life in 1980, he stopped caring about anything else and began to embrace life just for its own sake. Why did he think 1980 was such a bad year? Well, he had a heart attack in November of the same year, right before turning 37, while screwing one of the most attractive white women ever. When his wife attempted to leave him the next month, on New Year's Eve, he grabbed a gun and shot up her car. He started smoking rock cocaine mixed with ether, or freebasing. In 1979, taking his drug use to a new extreme, he sucked on his cocaine pipe like a chick's dick, stroked it as much as he could, and took it wherever with him. He was out of control on the Stir Crazy set early in 1980, causing full chaos to the shooting schedule by showing up for scenes half a day late and then holding the producers ransom for an additional $500,000, to finish the movie. Everything came to a head on June 9th. In his constant state of paranoia, Pryor believed he was being misled, mistreated, and conned out of his money. He attempted to take everything out of his numerous accounts when he walked into his bank on Sunset and Wine. The bank manager told him he couldn't approve the withdrawal and that he needed to give notice. After returning home, Pryor kept smoking the pipe until his cocaine ran out. He subsequently stated, "By then, I was suffering from severe dementia, captured in a bizarre world where feelings are continuously changing. He made the decision to end his life at this time, lighting the Bic lighter he was using with his pipe and dousing himself with rum. It required 3 tries to transform into a human torch." Some claim that his career ought to have ended at this point. There are rumors circulating that Richard tried to suicide because he was unhappy with his life. After this episode, Richard was mentioned in writings by many saying that he was lost forever. Pryor's staff said that the comic had scorched himself unintentionally after a glass of rum caught fire, but there was a lingering rumor that he had lit it himself on fire while freebasing and that the powerful ether had suddenly detonated. Naturally, both of these justifications reeked of the tragic comedy that fans had grown accustomed to from the artist. In any case, nobody gave suicide a thought since Richard Pryor obviously had too much to live for. The life-threatening event is classified as a suicide attempt by Richard Pryor's spouse, Jennifer Lee Pryor, in the documentary I Am Richard Pryor on Paramount Network. "He forewarned me," she tells People. "He told me, I've made up my mind. I don't know how I'm going to get out of this if I don't do this. You have to go in order to protect yourself from more harm, as there is no way out of this." Though I wasn't sure what he was planning, I knew he was. I made a house call. After someone responded, the phone was dropped, and I heard someone screaming. Richard was then frantically rushing through the burning house, but in the end, he survived to tell his story for another 25 years. What do you think about Richard Pryor's explosive career and the subsequent steady decline that ended in his death in 2005? Do share your thoughts on this in the comments section below. For more interesting stories and updates, subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to press the bell icon for notifications. Goodbye.